So welcome everyone for joining. Thank you for joining. Have a few people in chat just saying hi. Some people who are new grads in the media industry, some people who are joining us who have attended Humber Media Studies in some capacity. Welcome. Thank you for joining. So today is the inaugural episode of Ask BRTV. It's the first episode of the series that we'll be doing, where we will be having a panel that we bring on just to chat about 3Ms, which are the media industry. We're going to chat about some memories or key moments that we've had as media professionals or through our studies and experiences. And we will also chat about making connections. So that whole network component and how to network with the current media landscape and what is going on in the world right now. After the hour, we're going to chat for about 15 minutes, have a Q&A with everyone who is live inside the webinar. And exciting enough, we're also live streaming this webinar on Facebook. So thank you if you're joining and watching from Facebook. We do appreciate you watching and joining with us. We have a few attendees inside of Zoom already. And if you're watching on Facebook, we can see you as well. So thank you for joining us. So I'm going to get right started on the webinar itself and do some intros. So for this evening, I'm your host and moderator, Stephanie Gosine, or Steph Gosine. I graduated from Humber in the Media Studies department, class of 2014. I went and did a degree, became class of 2015. My background is in production coordination, so I love being a production manager. I've worked at CBC, Rogers, and the Shopping Channel. I've worked at DHX Media, which is now Wildbrain. Done some work for Humber College, and I'm currently at Blue Ant Media. We also have Brent, Casey, Lewis, and Angelina who are with us. Give us a wave. It's awesome. We can see you all here. Perfect. So I'll get right into those intros and I'll start off. I'll go with Brent, then Casey, Lewis, and then Angelina. So Brent, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Brent. I'm a technical producer for the CBC. I have worked for City TV, Sportsnet, TSN, NHL Network, and the Legislative Assembly of Ontario, amongst a bunch of live streaming companies and audio-video companies as well. I've been around the block a little bit. I'm a graduate from Humber from, I think, 2011. It's been a while. I've basically spent the last 10 years spending 80 hours a day in production and sleeping for 4 hours a day.
Amazing. So definitely a true media professional story. And thanks to everyone who's in the webinar for stepping in front of the camera and in front of the microphones. I know we live behind the camera, so I really appreciate you guys taking this time to share and be panelists. So this is awesome. So next we have Casey. Casey, give us a little intro.
I'm Casey. I graduated in June of 2019. I did my internship at the Disability Channel. From there, I went to program assistant with CBC Sports on a 3-month contract. And currently, I'm back at the Disability Channel doing video editing for them.
Amazing. And how was your time at CBC? I know we're going to chat about that a little bit later. I know you really wanted to get your start in sports. And how was your time there, just really quickly?
It was great. Everyone was so friendly and welcoming, and that's excellent for a first-time actual position out of college, to know that you can have coworkers that are so understanding regardless of your abilities.
Amazing. And we're going to get into that story a little bit later when we talk about some memories and key moments, a little bit more into the connecting part. And we have Lewis is going to share his bio with us.
Hey, I'm Lewis. I'm an automated master control operator at Bell Media, class of 2017, and I've done internships at Bell Media and ET Canada. And I'm a recent permanent resident of Canada, so that's pretty good. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, very excited to have that piece. I know we're going to talk about work in the industry when you just received your permanent residence, and with the current media landscape, how that has helped you in the industry. So we're definitely going to chat about that in the webinar. So thank you for sharing, Lewis. Really appreciate it. So next we have Angelina. So Angelina, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Angelina, and I'm a production holic. And I'll be honest, usually when I go to a party or something, people say, "What do you do?" And a lot of people have a straightforward answer. They're like, "Oh, I'm an editor. I'm a camera operator." for me, I really do a variety of things. So that's the most basic question about yourself, but I don't know how to answer it. So I just say I'm in production, because really every year I coordinate, I assist a producer. I'm an audio assistant, a camera assistant, editing, wardrobe, and office PA. That's usually every year I'll go through that cycle. Yeah, when I started out, I was on more of a technical route. So I was doing TVA, audio assisting, and I was even building the master control for chorus. But I ended up having a hip injury and a lot of back pain, so I had to kind of change to production. So a lot of more production.
And we're going to get into that journey a little bit later, and what you've kind of done recently as you've worked in scripted, non-scripted production, how you've navigated technical roles, how you've navigated everything from even craft services to, you know, on set and all of that. So really excited to hear more of your story. So thank you for sharing that background. So that was a quick summary of all the panelists we have. So really excited to have Brent, Casey, Lewis, and Angelina. And feel free, if you are in the Zoom chat, to post your questions in the comment sections. We are moderating them, and we're happy to answer or address them as we're going through the evening. So thank you so much for joining. So now we're going to share some key experiences we had either earlier on in our career, or whether it was through studying at Humber, which happens to be for all of us, or in our early studies, you know, what our experiences were maybe some key classes that stood out for us. Maybe it's our first experience either as a volunteer or in the program itself. We're going to share kind of some experiences or highlights as an early production year. So Brent, take it away.
Well, if we're going to start with the Humber program, I think what the one thing that stuck out with me was a lot of my peers and colleagues when I was going through school was saying, hey, be a producer, produce this, produce that. And for the first year or so, that's what I ended up doing. But in my second year, I wanted to do a lot more stuff, because at about the second year or so, I started getting a job actually with Rogers TV, which was where I was actually producing stuff for Rogers TV. And then I was still going back to school for television production. So I was very lucky in the sense that I had a job as a producer and was going to school for television. But I wanted to get my hands on in more gear-oriented roles, because I didn't want to lose what skill sets I had. So when people kept on pushing me to be a producer again in the second year, I kind of took a stand, and I tried to force other people to do it. And I'll say we tripped over our feet quite a bit, but I think that's what school is all about, is you're supposed to be able to trip over your feet. And you may not produce necessarily the best quality of content going through that process, but you learn a lot about each of yourselves, and learn a little bit about what it is that your strengths are and weaknesses are, and how you can develop those in a safe environment. And I think that's really important.
Definitely. And what is totally encouraged early on in your career is taking those risks in a safe environment, which is what school is there for. I mean, even in the first couple years of your career, you're going to make some mistakes, but, you know, we're trying to continue on with the learning. We're in a learning environment when we're at Humber. We're producing documentaries or pilots. We're all learning together. So definitely a collaborative environment where we can learn technical skills, people skills, soft skills, production skills all at once. And it's a safe place for all of us to share that learning together and go through the process as a group. So,
agreed.
Yeah, so definitely a great analogy there. So Casey, what is a highlight you would share from your studies, or a course that you would like to highlight to the group?
So I remember when I started the course, I think it was the first week in camera and lighting. One thing that really stood out to me was Jamie had said in the first week, you need to really pay attention to what's going on in broadcasting locally in the country. If you wanted to, you know, pay attention to what you're going to be getting into. As a result of hearing this, I went to actually Ottawa to watch Canada Day on Parliament Hill, because I knew that CBC had done a huge broadcast. And I had watched it for years, and I'm like, wow, I need to be in that energy, seeing how this whole thing is broadcast. And it was crazy to see, even the night before, the amount of sound checks that goes into something like that, the amount of people that go out to something like that. You're dealing with the whole country. And it was just, I'm very happy I got that experience. And that was back in 2015, I believe.
Yeah, and definitely the main focus of that information was be in the environment that you want to be in, learn from the people that you want to learn from, or whether you want to do sports, get in an arena, be a part of a production, whether it's community programming. And community programming was huge. I know at the beginning of my career, where there were the Rogerses or the Shaws or the local broadcasters, where we had that experience, thankfully, and we were able to learn on the go while producing community programming or sports. And we were able to learn a lot that way, even being in a production environment before going into college itself. So I know that was beneficial to a lot of people. And I know in Humber specifically, there is a mobile production component. So we are able to be in a sports environment for sure, produce some studio content, and we're also able to, replicate what happens in the field, maybe on a smaller scale, or it looks a little different, but definitely with all the functionalities of what you could expect in a newsroom or what you could expect in a sports environment. So that is so true. Get on those productions, get that experience in whatever way you can, and definitely jump on any internships or positions that you can. And I know we're gonna dive into that a little bit next, where we talk about internships, but I appreciate you sharing that story, Casey.
Thank you.
So Lewis, key learning from the program at Humber that really stood with you, that helped you in your career. I know you have some background before coming into Humber, so I would love to hear your feedback on the program and how that helped you kind of get into what you're into today.
Yeah, so I kind of started a little bit on radio, but then coming into the program, it was a real learning experience because I've never dealt with TV really before. Not really knowing what to do, and then learning from all the different teachers was certainly a really good experience for me. I think like some of the highlights, definitely working with Kathleen, with the editors, with the script writers, and also in the production truck. But even if you don't know what to do, like going into this course, by the end of it, you'll have a solid idea of what to do. So it's a really great course, and there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. But for me, like I never expected I'd end up where I am now, but that was all thanks to Humber, So yeah,
definitely. And I know for everyone watching or listening, we're talking a little bit about Humber just because all the panelists and myself have a background studying at Humber. So we're just taking a few minutes to chat about our experience there. But I do encourage you, everyone, if you're interested in being in the media industry, whether it's, in front of the camera, behind the camera, whether you're interested in animation, graphic design, anything like that, I do encourage you, take your learning seriously, watch even YouTube videos, take courses online. Now is the time to do that, to get those extra skills in order to make you a better professional, make you a better media professional, and to learn some new skills just to help in your craft. So I definitely encourage that if you're interested in starting in the media industry, or if you're well on your career, there's always something to be learned. There's always a new software, there's always new hardware, there's always new gear. There's always something to catch up on. So I do encourage anyone who's interested in any facet of media to invest in some online learning as well, and to watch productions. That would be my key takeaway from that, is watch the productions that you're interested in being on. As Casey mentioned, watch them, study them, and then one day you'll end up being a part of them. So that's my key advice there. So Angelina, based on your learning at Humber, how has that helped you in your variety of roles in your career? How has that helped you kind of be a launch board for your career?
Well, for me, the most important thing was to do the internship. When I looked at all the schools that I'd been accepted to, that's the one that had an internship the second year. I didn't want to be in school for that long. I had been at Rogers TV for a few years, and they have pretty much the same equipment, industry level professional equipment, so amazing. But I just really wanted to take that internship. But the teacher that I liked the most was Kathy Lee, which she isn't there anymore. But what I liked about her was she was raw and honest. She would tell stories about when she fucked up and how to do things. And she never went like, oh, you know, I worked with this famous person or whatever. So I really like that raw honesty, which is hopefully what we're going to be able to do, is just talk about stuff we've done.
Exactly. And yeah, that leads nicely into my story, which is really a key highlight for me in the program was the production management course. For myself, I had been in community programming in Rogers and also, you know, doing church productions as well. So I had kind of seen video production and a studio setup where I was lucky to be in a live stream environment. So you know, I didn't necessarily want to be a camera operator or an editor. I loved knowing the knowledge, don't get me wrong, but I loved also watching a production from beginning to end. And I was kind of really fascinated with the paperwork. I know that's not common for everyone, but I loved organizing people as well as tech. So I like to have the bird's eye view of it all. So when I had the production management course, and you know, Kathy Lee was one of the professors at the time, she really took the time to sit down with me in my resume and say, you know, look, Stephanie, you know, I know this is what you want to do, but your resume doesn't exactly say that. It's all over the place. You know, you've done some different things. What can we do to make sure your resume says exactly what you want it to say? And, you know, from her personally and from her class, I know there were a lot of guest speakers that came in. We're going to share later about some key connections that we've had, but just from that course alone, it really solidified that I wanted to follow the production management route and really get into that area of production. So definitely shout outs to Kathy Lee for providing that forum and that opportunity to have guest speakers in. And I'm hoping that through this webinar and through this recording that we're able to bring value to people that are listening and watching with us, and give some key insights and takeaways that people can take back with them. So thanks everyone for sharing your highlights from BRTV. And I know we're gonna jump right into our internship experience and kind of entering the workplace. So Brent, if you want to chat, I know you were working all through Humber, but chat a little bit about your internship and your initial roles when you got out of Humber and were in the workplace.
Yeah, sure. I was, like I said, I was lucky enough to secure a role on a community television station early on, but I still had a conversation with the program coordinator at the time, and it was still necessary for me to complete an internship. So I decided to do multiple internships, one being at a church, which had a multi-camera setup, as well as one for a mobile production over at Blue Mountain. Both were very big learning experiences. The Blue Mountain, I've done a lot of mobile productions on a community level, but Blue Mountain, I would say, took me out into like minus 20-degree weather. Kind of really tested the limits because you were working long hours hauling cable up and down hills in icy weather. So it was a real kind of eye opener in that regard. So how, you know, the glamour of mobile production can be glamorous, but there's a lot of slugging away if you're not on the air conditioned arena, essentially, right? So the York Minster Park Baptist Church is where I did one of my internships, ended up turning into a job, and then I ended up becoming kind of a director / coordinator there for a while. And I brought in teams, and we ended up doing production out of that place for a period of time. And then I tended to move on, but before that, that's okay. I thought I had some fold back there for a second. From that point, I trained and groomed somebody else to take over, and who is, I think you asked to be a panelist on here as well. And I think he's still doing it today. And occasionally the church will come back when I think he's not available to do it and will ask me to backfill. And I don't mind doing on the odd occasion, but for the ongoing thing, it was the next step I had to move on, right? but yeah, so there was a lot of good experiences through that. You learn, especially when your limits are tested, you learn where you are going to test yourself physically and emotionally, and what you will allow for on a production versus don't wanting to have to work on a production again based off of certain type of work experiences, right? And it's important for crew as well as experiences that you all have an understanding of what you will allow on set, because if you don't and that's not compatible, it can get very toxic very quick. So that's something that I've learned through the various internship programs.
Yeah, and definitely you learn about all the personalities you're going to experience or encounter, whether it's on your crew, whether it's talent, people you're working with, working for. You definitely learn that very quickly, how to work with people you have to work with, because that's the show.
And oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But I do want to say that there's a lot of great people in this industry, and I will say that when you're working 18 hours a day, sleeping for 4 hours, and getting up for another 18 hours, tempers get feuded and heated and that kind of thing, and things need to get tested, right? So but there's a lot of great people in this industry, and I don't want to discourage anybody from that. So you just have to understand patience and tolerance sometimes. So.
Yeah, definitely. And also, as you mentioned, there's a lot that goes into production. So to get those glamour shots, there's pre-production, there's tech rehearsals. It does not all just come together by itself. If you're new into the media industry, you'll learn quite quickly that you're showing up way before call time. You think there's a crew call time, you better be early, because you will have to set up your own gear. You will have to make sure that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed. So definitely a lot goes into production, whether you're on the physical production itself, whether you're in the control room, whether you are a part of even producing the production. There's a lot of work that goes into it there. So definitely a rewarding career. I mean, it's really cool when you see your work on TV. Definitely love seeing any production I've worked on TV, whether in production or in post-production. It's definitely the coolest feeling, but it's definitely more of a sigh of relief that, okay, it got there, and then you can mentally prepare for the next task. So very rewarding career, but do realize that a lot of work does go into it.
Absolutely.
So Casey, share a little bit about your internship and entering the workplace. I know we're going to chat about your internship, and then we can chat about the workplace part where you have an experience where we kind of cross paths.
Yeah. So my internship at the Disability Channel actually was a good learning experience for me, because I went into it knowing that I would be doing video editing. But I was used to David's class where I was sitting in front of a computer doing my own assignments, where at the Disability Channel, you sort of manage it like a team effort. So you're given multiple videos to edit, and you have to sort of manage what you can deal with at one time, and then you have to hand it off. You have to hand something else. You might have to hand something else off to the next person. So that was a bit of a learning experience for me, but it was also good for me, because I'm like, there's not much I can take at one time. I have to concentrate on one thing at a time, sort of. And after we edit, we put it up on YouTube to go private, so that our boss can review it before he puts it public. And that is the most rewarding feeling, when you see it go public, because you've worked on something that now anyone can see, basically. And when it doesn't go public for a while, you start to get worried, like, was that my best work? But you have to keep reassuring yourself that even if it wasn't, there's always room for improvement, no matter what.
And definitely I can speak to that, as to, in the production process, you're not always approved on the first try. There are rounds of feedback that happen, whether you're a freelancer whether you're working for someone, any part of the production process, there are definitely rounds of review. But again, as I had mentioned, the best thing is seeing your work out there. And also, you know, the hardest thing to watch is also your work being out there. I know a few times I've kind of closed my eyes because I'd watched the show so many times that I didn't want to even see it. But it's so rewarding when a production is signed off on and you have that completed check mark. And I know you want to share your initial start in the workplace, Casey, so go ahead.
So my initial start in the workplace started last September, actually. I actually crossed paths with Stephanie, or Stephanie got in contact with me after being a guest speaker in Kathleen's class and said, hey, Casey, there's a big opportunity coming up at CBC, and I think you'd really enjoy it. So I applied for it. It was a 3-month contract exclusively for people with disabilities. It was called the CAPE program, and it was in all different departments in CBC. I applied in the sports department. I went in for an interview, my first ever job interview, professional job interview, and I actually got the position, which was, I was very proud of myself, and it was just very interesting to know that, and very accomplishing to know that people in my first job actually understood me and accepted me and were willing to answer, even if I had 50 questions a day, because I started doing shortlisting, which I had never done before. And it was learning a whole new program other than Premiere. It was actually learning Media Central. So I had like 50 questions a day, and I think all 50 were answered every day. So that put my mind at ease, knowing that even if I'm unsure of something, ask before you do it.
And definitely in any new role, you know, it's a new environment, you're working with new people, and you may not know every software technology or piece of gear that you're working with. So being in a safe environment, again, as we mentioned, to ask questions and to have people you can work with who really just want what's best for you. I mean, you, as you mentioned, asked so many questions, but I'm sure they were happy to answer it just to know that you were showing interest in the role that you were placed in. And, you know, I remember as you were going through the interview process, you were so nervous and you were chatting with me almost every day before the interview, just to make sure that, you know, you gave your 100%. And I know that when you were in the role, you gave your 100%. I know you got feedback from your colleagues and peers there as well, that they were really happy to have you. And I think that was an incredible opportunity that you had through that program to get that experience. And I know that's something that is definitely sticking with you in your career as a good memory.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that for me, by the way.
Anytime, Casey, anytime. So Louis, I know you are eager to share your first experience in the industry and your internship. How did that go about?
Yeah, so I think my first internship was in, so a speaker came into the production management class, an editor at TT Canada. I went to talk to her, and she said, okay, I'll put you in touch with this person. So I contacted that person, and then I was really lucky to get the internship at ET Canada. And then I also applied to one at Bell Media, and I was waiting on that one for a long time, so I didn't hear back from that one. So then I started the internship at ET Canada, and then at the end of the internship, I got the call to do an internship at Bell Media, which was really cool. So at ET Canada, I was kind of doing a lot of roles. I was kind of shadowing, so I didn't have a lot of opportunity to kind of get to do stuff hands-on. But it was an in-house production. It was really cool. And then at Bell Media, it was a lot of things hands-on, like the operators would like to do everything. And actually at ET Canada, I got to operate the camera too, but it was a whole bunch of interesting things. And I think the biggest tip that I would give when you're doing an internship, like always take a notebook with you, always write everything down, because you never know when you'll need it.
Definitely. Yeah. Take a lot of notes. And especially when you're starting off in those first positions, as Casey mentioned, you know, ask all the questions that come to mind. That is the time where you get to ask people who are already in the industry, you know, the ins and outs of it. These are your supervisors, your colleagues. They may share their experience with you, and you may get a networking opportunity out of that. And I know that's going to be a focus for a little bit later, is talking about networking, but definitely those initial conversations that you have early on or throughout your career, or what put you on different crews throughout your career. And I know later on, even Brent will attest to that, you know, how certain individuals in our lives really set us up for the rest of our lives in some cases. And it's also our job to pay it forward as well, as because other people did that for us. As Casey shared, that, you know, if, you know, someone invests in us, let's invest in other people. Let's give them our feedback. Let's network with them. Let's participate in a panel discussion, and let's chat about, you know, how we can lift each other up in the media industry and really push us forward. So I really appreciate that. And I think it's so important, you know, any of these individuals that we cross paths with, that we do actually take down their contact information. We do actually talk to them. And I know in this panel, a little later, we're going to have an opportunity to do that and network with those who are in the panel. So I think that's a fantastic way where we're able to continue on in that spirit of making connections. So thanks for that, Lewis. Angelina, your internship and your many roles coming out of Humber or before Humber, I know you've mentioned you've been kind of all over the place, as you say it, but what was your internship that led you into the media industry?
So believe it or not, I got my internship by taking the assignments seriously. I know it sounds like a novel concept, but we were asked to interview somebody, and my roommate was actually a production coordinator at Insight, so I could have just interviewed him, but I'm like, no, it's not about hitting the marks, it's about networking. That's the whole point of the assignment, obviously. So I got him to help me find somebody in Big Brother Canada that I could interview, and he pointed me towards the amazing, wonderful Sue Brophy, the executive producer of Big Brother Canada at the time. She's now semi-retired, and she keeps saying that she's having a semi. But afterward, I followed up with her, and I told her like the grade, and I said thank you and everything, and I asked like, is it possible to get an internship? And she said yeah. She put me in there, got me connected with who I needed to be with, and I was in the control room. So I was actually seeing how the entire show worked. I got to learn everyone's job, because if they had to go to the bathroom, they weren't allowed to leave unless somebody could cover their job, because it's a 24/7 thing.
Yep.
So I got to learn all of their jobs, and I was kind of like the tooth fairy, Santa Claus, going between the house and production. And I met a bunch of people, and I was actually hired during my internship. I didn't tell Humber about that because it technically didn't count. But I've been with them for 4 seasons so far, 3 full-time, 1 part-time, because I started doing something else as well. And every job I've had since then, I can trace it back somehow to the people I met at Big Brother, whether it be directly somebody there who I networked with saying, hey, come do this, or somebody that I met with got me a job, and then I got that experience, and then that experience got me another job. Like, everything can be trickled down to that first internship. And we were really lucky, though. I had graduated in 2015, and we had the Pan Am Games at the time. I think you guys might be in the opposite situation, where there's not an abundance of opportunity, but not very much opportunity for now. So one important thing I want to say is I had a job working for the Blue Jays. I was doing security, and they started noticing I was taking a bit too much time off for this television stuff, as they said. And I went, okay. So they said, you have to choose between us or them. And I had just gotten hired for the Pan Am Games, and it wasn't going to last very long, only a couple weeks. But the Blue Jays would have taken me to October. So I quit. And what I did was I quit the safe job. I quit the thing that would have taken me to October, because if I stayed at the Blue Jays or Foot Locker or any of those things, I wouldn't have had the time to focus and work full-time in the industry and make all the connections that I have.
Yeah, definitely sometimes we have to jump foot first into an opportunity that may seem like short term but has long-term benefits. I mean, I can't even imagine the connections you made also being on that production itself, the people you got to network with. I mean, yeah, it was substituted for, you know, you didn't have those extra months guaranteed of employment, but you did get that production experience in exchange for that. And I know sometimes, you know, we look at it as, you know, there may not be a full-time opportunity, or here's a quick contract, and we're always looking at what is the next opportunity that I can do just to secure the bag. But sometimes, you know, in between contracts, or even times where we have pause, like now for a lot of us, we get to kind of pick up those pet projects that we had left to the side. We got to write that script we've been putting off, or, you know, dream up that production that we want to make. So in these times of pauses that we may have in between contracts, you know, it's a good time to work on things that we may have set aside, and as well as take that time to do some learning for ourselves, as I've mentioned. So definitely, you know, that kind of wraps up my thought of, you know, making, you know, memories, as well as, you know, key moments that we've had, you know, in our career. And that really alludes nicely into kind of our last point, which is, you know, the making connections and the networking part. And we've chatted about that a little bit early on in our career, how that really started with, you know, a connection. Maybe a person spoke to us, maybe it was a, you know, a panel discussion that we participated in or we attended. It might have been a crew member on set who led us to network with another individual who has had us on productions ever since. And I know next Brent is going to speak about the importance of networking and how that happened in his life. But I just want to emphasize the importance of networking, because for everyone here who's about to speak on the topic, we've definitely had those experiences where networking created an opportunity for us. So Brent, take it away.
Yeah, I think when we talk about networking, it really comes down to, you know, when you want to work in an industry that is very hard to get into, knocking on doors is probably like the best way to show people face to face who you are, right? And when I say knocking on doors, not physically going and knocking on someone's door, but you know, trying to reach out via email, trying to call somebody, trying to put yourself forward in every shape of the way, because you never know when that person will respond and say, you know what, I actually need somebody. I actually need somebody to operate a camera, or I need somebody to run a cable. And you know, through those processes, you start to meet other people, because now you're on crew, now you're on set. So now you're going to meet, you're going to meet Jeff, you're going to meet Mike, you're going to meet Sarah, you're going to meet Shelly, whomever, right? And these people go in different directions in production, but now you're meeting all these people that are going in different directions, but you never know when Sarah might need somebody, or Scott might need somebody, or Mike might need somebody. And your connections are now grown from 2 people to 10 people, like that. So, you know, it's always great to have somebody give you your first step, but it's really on you once you get that first step on how you treat it and how far you move forward with it. You know, if this is really important to you, you want to show up 10 minutes early before everybody else shows up, just so that you're there. And then when people come in, oh, you're there? Oh, we love to see that you're there. So we're going to call you back, because now we know that you're dependable, versus not knowing anything about you and not knowing anything, right? So knowing that you're dependable, hardworking, dedicated, and passionate about what you do really gets you far. But it's also on you to make sure that you're constantly saying, hey, how's it going? Hey, what are you doing? And I think, you know, in this business, I find there are a lot of people like to do outings either post-production or pre-production, or even during production, but not in production hours. And it's good to go to those meetings and meetups. And yes, you might take you an hour outside of your work schedule to, you know, have a beer or have a discussion, have some nachos and meet. But you never know what comes out through those conversations and where people might go. So I think it's really, really important for networking. And it comes on you a little bit more each time that you move. But also, when somebody helps you, it's also very important that when somebody else that you know has helped you in the past, and maybe they're a little down on their luck, and you have an opportunity to help them, pay it forward, because it really does help.
And I love that. Always emphasizing the point of paying it forward, because again, as we've mentioned, people paid it forward to us, and it's our responsibility in this tight-knit community to create opportunities for other people to be able to network and have positions where they're able to also contribute and then pay it forward to other people. And I appreciate the nachos point. I love that. Definitely grab a coffee or some nachos with people after production or before production, as me and Brent have done before. Just not during production hours, as me and Brent have never done before. Exactly. So love that. And so Casey, share a little bit about networking. I know you mentioned already your story about us networking. You've mentioned also, when I did a workshop in the class where you attended. You can speak a little bit more to that, but also, how through your experiences, how helpful it is for you to have people who will go out of their way to have that conversation or have that chat with you.
So definitely, like, you were a big part of it. And when I was at CBC, there was someone that worked as a producer, like a social media producer, kitty corner to where I was working. So we actually went one day and had a coffee, and I expressed to her my interest in, maybe starting a podcast. And she said, well, the girl that sits adjacent to you actually does a podcast for CBC. And I'm like, oh yeah, I knew that, but I'm like, I don't really want to bug people like that, because I know their days are busy, their days are long. Like, for me, it's hard to work up the courage sometimes to go and ask someone, hey, can I shadow you? So I went back to her at the end of the day that day, and I said, hey, can I shadow you, like, coming up? Because it was coming to the end of my time at CBC. She said, oh yeah, come tomorrow. I'm like, well, I wasn't thinking tomorrow, but maybe in the next week. So we actually made that happen. And if I had had that coffee with that producer, I probably wouldn't have worked up the courage to do that. So it's so important to tell yourself to work up the courage to do that, because you might not know where it leads you.
And definitely, and I can attest to, Casey being nervous to approach people and colleagues, asking for a recommendation, or even, someone to take a few minutes out of their schedule. It does take a little courage. But what I've learned is that, you can only regret not doing something. If you go out of your way and you try your best, the worst they can say is no, right? But at least you know that you tried. And in the environment that you were in at the time, you're in an internship situation, you're in a contract situation, everyone knows why you're there. And a lot of people are open to networking, and a lot of people in the back of their mind are thinking, hey, it would have been nice to have a coffee or have a drink with so-and-so, but they never say it. So definitely we want to create opportunities where we can network with people. I mean, some people say they'll do it and then it never happens, but at least, you put yourself in a position to be vulnerable, and you took that risk and you asked, hey, would you take some time just to have a chat with me? I know, my contract's coming to an end. And then that turned into a learning opportunity that you now can take with you in your career, where you have a little background on how it's being done in the industry and how you can apply that to what you're doing. So congrats, Casey, that took a lot of courage. And definitely, even with us just starting this webinar, this is the first episode. This is something new that took courage for everyone who's attending here. So again, I really appreciate them stepping in front of the camera and in front of the microphone. But it only happens if we do it. If we put it off, it doesn't happen. So I really appreciate everyone's time and putting their best memories, their best experiences, and sharing it with the group. So really thankful. And I know everyone watching is thankful for you sharing your experiences. So I just wanted to say that to everyone. So thank you. So Louis, tell us a little bit about networking. How has that helped you? You shared it early on, someone came into the class and networked with you and created some opportunity there. How has that helped you moving forward in your career?
You know what? I think everyone wants to help people in some way, and there's a degree of help that someone can give you. Like other people can give you some help and other people can't give you a lot of help, so there's that to consider. But I think in the last days of my internship, I'm a really shy person, but I took the courage to go up to the manager and I was like, hey, like my last few days of the internship, is there anything that I can do, anything I can help with? So they were like, oh, I'm not sure. But they took that to the head of post-production at Bell. They were really impressed with all that story. And then they invited me for a meeting. And that's how I ended up getting my first job. So it's literally like talking to people.
You came from where? So just expand where you came from and where you landed.
Sorry, say that again.
So where did you come from before? I know you mentioned that you're now permanent resident. So
Yes.
Where were you doing production before, and where are you doing production now?
Well, I mean, I was a student at Humber. I came from Wales. I came from the UK. Came here to do came here on a study permit. Then it turned into a work permit, and now I'm working as a automated master control operator. So I mean, it's speaking to people, and there's a whole, like if you don't speak to someone, then they don't know that they can help you. Like they don't know you need help, right? Like so. It's definitely talking to people for sure.
Yeah, and definitely, you hit the nail right on the head of, creating opportunities where people can help, not demanding, hey, you need to help me with this, but just putting yourself out there and say, hey, you know what? It'd be cool if we had a coffee and chatted about insert topic of interest, right? And I think creating those opportunities is really something that I know everyone here on the panel, I mean, that's the reason we're on the panel, is to discuss opportunities where we can learn and share our experiences. So definitely, you're absolutely correct. Everyone wants an opportunity to be able to help someone else, and hopefully with good intentions. So really appreciate that story, Lewis.
No problem.
Angelina, so entering the workplace, you spent some time at a lot of different productions. How important has networking been to you when you're navigating the media landscape and production?
Well, I don't think there's anything I can really say that's different from what everyone else said about the traditional networking. You talk to somebody, you get something or you don't. But I kind of want to talk about the three things that aren't usually discussed. So one is you're probably going to have like mental breakdowns with these people. Like I worked overnight on Big Brother and I saw my friends, it was a very skeleton crew, but there was this one person who like we got super close and like it was very difficult. And that one person brings me to so many places because we bonded over tragedy, really. It was just like you're mentally falling apart, so you become very vulnerable. And these things are going to happen. You're going to create these very, hopefully, raw and honest relationships with a few people. Sometimes more than likely, it's actually going to be that you're thrown into this project, it's millions of dollars, you have to be friends right away, and then it's fleeting. Like as soon as it's over, you never speak to them again. But those raw, honest friendships, those people are always going to hire you. The second thing is Facebook. I've gotten so many jobs from Facebook. All these groups, like I need a producer, fixer, whatever the hell, Canada. These ones, I've gotten so many jobs from them. Sometimes people will message me and be like, hey, I heard you're an editor, come edit full-time for me. And I'd be like, I don't know who even recommended you, but sure, I'll do that. That's what got me through my surgery. I was working full-time editing from home while I was healing my hip. And the third thing is sometimes shit's just gonna happen and you're not gonna know why. It's gonna be really weird. Like that one girl I was talking about before, she brought me over to Impulse to cover for her when she went to the doctor. And I'm like, okay, I'll just cover office PA just one time. She had a car and everything, so with that company I had to do a defensive driving course in order to drive her car to do my tasks. I had to fill out like the giant paperwork. By the time I'd finished all that, it took a while, and they got a call that somebody on the crew had passed out, and I had to go to the hospital and go be with that person. So I'm like, great, you do all this paperwork, then you're gone for 8 hours. Like nobody even sees you. What was the point, right? Like I totally didn't make an impression on these people. But then a week later, she's like, hey, are you free on Monday? I'm like, yeah, but why? And she's like, oh, one of the producers fired their assistant and they want you. I'm like, but how? Like, but apparently, like, just sending a couple texts throughout the day saying, like, this person is doing this and this person is getting this test done or whatever was enough for that producer to go, she's the one. So you never know how you're going to get that job. Just do your best all the time.
And that's definitely a point to what even Brent shared earlier about be dependable, show your face, show up early, do whatever you can to communicate, you know, that you're there to help, you're there to step in if they need anything, office PA, driver, you know, an extra hour, anything, especially when you're in a new position, because you're at a point where you want to make that good face time with everyone and you want to make that good impression. So that's when it's definitely so important. So we're in the last 5 minutes of the webinar. So it's been an amazing hour. We just wanted to close off just sharing some encouragement. We realize that right now is a very difficult time for those of our colleagues in the production environment. We're going to share a little bit of encouragement in the last 5 minutes. And if you do have some extra time from 8 to 8:15, we're going to do a Q&A with our panel members. So if you stick around for the last 15 minutes, you can ask us individually some questions. That'll be the time where we answer some questions that were asked ahead of time, as well as questions to everyone attending the panel. So we look forward to that. So just in closing, some words of encouragement. You know, it's a difficult time for all of us. Brent, what are some words that you're going to share, whether it's people who are looking to get into the media industry, people who are in the media industry currently out of work? What are some key thoughts or takeaways that you have for them? Sorry, you're muted, Brent.
Sorry, I was trying not to have my little bangs and whatnot heard, so try to keep muted. I think that this the industry right now, as the media goes, yes, COVID-19 has kind of put a stop on a lot of different things, but the news industry is out through the roof right now. I will say, as production goes and media goes as a whole, the need for content has never been greater. It's just the way that people are consuming it is very different, and it's from a variety of different mediums. So if you're looking at getting into the media biz or the production biz and you want to do something, understand that there is probably a place for you and what it is that you have to offer. You just need to find that place. And, you know, I'm more than happy to always offer a helping hand to anybody that ever reaches out to me. And I'm always trying to find places for people from my perspective, right? That's what I've always tried to do. Somebody's helped me, I try to repay the favor. And I'm sure that everybody else on this panel is of the same mindset. Outside of that, like when I say the media industry and the production industry has never been greater, you have television broadcast traditional, you have live stream, you have corporate audio visual, you have YouTube content, social media content, you have animation, you have graphics, just continues to go on, scripted content. Wherever you're going to end up, you're going to end up. Just make sure whatever it is that you do, have a passion for and pursue it.
Definitely. Such great advice. Casey, a minute of words of encouragement for those watching and listening.
So I would say if you're currently studying, don't think you're going to put networking off until you get into the workplace. Do it right away. Even with all that's going on right now, you can email, you can make phone calls, you can Zoom. There's a lot of different resources you can use to still network. And I would just say don't wait any longer. I know it sounds a lot like an infomercial, but it's so true.
And after this Zoom is a great opportunity in the next 15 minutes to do that. Grab our contact information and ask all the questions you have. Lewis, a minute to share some words of encouragement.
Yeah, despite what's going on, despite the current crisis, there are jobs out there. There's loads of freelancer jobs out there. You know, just get in touch with people in the industry. They're always looking for freelancers, and that can always lead to a full-time job. So that's, you know, that's pretty much, that's my words of encouragement. But,
Amazing.
yeah.
Angelina, take us away.
I'll try to be concise, and I have some really important advice about the COVID thing, but we can discuss it afterward. But in the first week of my internship, I was cleaning vomit out of a slop bucket. In that same show, we had our set flood. Our crew was threatened with chainsaws, and a kangaroo pooped in a chair. Essentially, these are just things I'm allowed to talk about. And to be honest, nothing we say today can prepare you for the craziness that you're about to endeavor on. Just know that there's no hitting it big time. So don't hinge your happiness on that, because I've been on the biggest shows in Canada and I'm still moving up. This industry goes through lines of zigzags. So you're never gonna just go in a straight line up. You're gonna go into a higher position, a lower position. Don't ever like think you're too good for anything. If someone seems like they're more successful than you, then just cheer them on and hope that they hire you, because you want people to be good at stuff, because you're going to be bad at those things, and you're going to be bad at stuff, and people are going to want you because you're good at something that they're bad at. It's a team effort, and honestly, you want that. It's not competitive. So if you're doing better than someone, pay it forward and hire them and treat them with respect. We all learned in class that there's a million ways to edit a video, but there's also a million ways to go through the industry. There's no proper way.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Angelina. And with that, there's always a need for content. Content creation is something that's so important right now. We're consuming content, whether we're at home or we're in the production industry. So I do encourage you, if you're not currently on production, produce content, put those side projects into practice that you had on hold, and definitely network. So thank you everyone for tuning in to the inaugural episode of Ask BRTV. We're so thankful that you joined us. This audio and video will be available later on social platforms. So thank you so much for joining us.